If you think you can't talk to people about your game in person, I have great news for you. You're wrong. You can, it's a skill, and if you practice it, you can get better and better at it. And it's a skill called pitching. And you've probably heard this in terms of pitching to publishers, pitching to investors, that kind of stuff, but it can really be to anyone. It doesn't have to be to go ask someone for money. You can pitch to anyone that you talk to, anyone that you see, and it's a skill that you practice over and over again and develop. Pitching isn't just something that you do when you talk to publishers or when you talk to investors. It's really just a conversation between you and another person who you may or may not know, where you're going to tell them about what you're working on. Over the years of building my own products and learning from other people about pitching, I've put together a short, easy way for you to think about how you can pitch your game to somebody else and how you can talk about your game to somebody else. And that's really all it is just a conversation with another person in a targeted way where you're just talking about your game. So you don't have to think about it like this big scary thing where you're going to go jump in front of people and ask them for a bunch of money. It's just a conversation between you and another person where it's like, hey, this is what I'm working on. Cool, you want to check it out? If you're just talking to someone, usually the first thing you say is like, hey, what's up? And that's probably a good way to start the conversation instead of just going up to him and be like, hi, I'm making a cozy auto battler. It does this. Because they may or may not care about that. So if you talk to them, just say like, hey, how you doing? Or something like that. Make it a conversation with them. That number one thing you do is tell the other person what it is. And this is just saying what your game is. At first, you probably are tempted to just say it's a cozy city builder or something like that, or a hack and slash action roguelike, and that's okay as long as your audience knows what those terms mean. But even some players may not know what these genre terms mean because they come up all the time. People invent new ones, they invent new buzzwords for it. We can take that and change it into a friendlier version or a more conversational version of the genre name. So we can take that term cozy auto battler, for example, and turn it into something that's a bit more conversational. So we could say something like cute frogs fighting bugs. Cool. And so with that first statement, you would say, hey, I'm making a game about cute frogs fighting bugs. And so that kind of statement appeals to a much broader audience than just someone who happens to know those genre-specific terms. Doing another example with the genre name that tends to just get longer and longer, a hack and slash roguelike deck builder. Wow, say that 3 times fast. Something you could say here is, I'm making a game where you collect cards to fight zombies. And that gets together the whole idea of that complex genre name into a short statement that is more conversational, it's more general, so people can connect with you a little bit more in a more human way. Of course, you've got to know your audience a little bit, and if you're in a situation where you're pitching to someone that is in the game industry or something like that, they probably know those terms, but in my opinion, it's better to go with the conversational, the friendly approach, rather than just throwing buzzwords at them. So now, on to the next part. You told them what your thing is. Tell them what they're going to do when they get in there. And when you tell them this, imagine that you are the player and you're talking to another player about that game. You're not the developer of the game in this situation. Pretend like you're a player. Pretend like you don't know that it uses A-star pathfinding or something like that. For the most part, nobody wants to know technical details when you pitch to them, and if they do, they'll probably ask you. If you think about it from the standpoint of you're a player playing the game, and you're just telling your friend who is another player about that game, then that helps you frame the discussion such that you're talking more about the other person than you are about yourself. And that's really key when it comes to making a convincing pitch and talking to people about your game and getting people interested in your game. So make sure the context is on the player, not on you as the creator or you as the studio. One easy statement to do this, to get people started with it, is just saying you are X and you're doing Y. So you're a wizard and you're fighting zombies. You're a survivor in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and you're trying to not die. You can think about using that pattern of you are X and you're doing Y after you've told them what it is the game is to try to put together this convincing pitch. The goal for that pitch there is you have 3 to 5 words of just saying what it is, and then maybe one sentence that says what it is they're going to do. Especially when you're going up to someone and you're talking to them about what you're doing, you really don't have very much time at all to grab their attention. Finally, last part, this is something that you may or may not do depending on the situation, and that is to close or to give them your call to action. The call to action that you do after the end of your pitch really depends on the person you're talking to. I also like to involve them in the conversation a little bit and ask them a question, like ask them, do you play games, or what's the last game you played? That's a great one, by the way. Instead of asking, do you play games, ask what the last game you played was. And if they say they can't remember, if they've never played a game, you probably don't need to try to close the deal with them. They're not a gamer. Your call to action is really something where you're just saying the thing that you want that person to do and how they can do it. So in this case, you can tell them to scan a QR code if you have a QR code. If it's online somewhere, you can include a link to what you're doing. You may not have time to do it at all, and you can just tell them the name. It's a lot of action for them to take, and it can be a little tough for them to find it that way. So that's why I like using things like QR codes, but you do you. That covers my 3 steps for you to pitch your game and to get better at pitching your game to people when you talk to them in real life or on Zoom or something like that, or on a recorded video. Hopefully this easy way to structure pitches has been useful for you. If you like that kind of stuff, let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.